Good afternoon. We're here this evening to discuss STEM at Timpson High School and how it will eventually go all throughout our district, but specifically how STEM will affect you in the classroom and your instructional strategies. So what is STEM? I know you've heard the word tossed around lately. It actually stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. But I realize that I'm talking to everyone as a whole, and I appreciate all of our teachers. Each discipline is very important. Even though English and history and CTE courses aren't specifically mentioned in this acronym, I guarantee that STEM will affect you in your classroom and in a positive sense. Um, Across the board, STEM is a good thing. It just is. Because, when we think about it, even when I was growing up, when I was in school, we were forced to think on our own more and more. We didn't rely so much on calculators or rely on technology or anything like that, like this generation does. And I know that many generations a little bit older than myself, then you relied on technology even less than what I did. And in the past, 20, 30, 40 years, technology has expanded so quickly and so vastly that a lot of times our students don't think independently. So the STEM as a whole, it forces students to think independently and what we might just call common sense. It goes back to that. Original thinking, realistic design, and it's important for today's workforce in the future. So, if you'll give me just a second, I want to show you a video that might be able to explain this better than what I can. Hold on. Maybe I need help on technology myself. Some STEM training may help. Okay. So let's do this. Okay, I hope you enjoy this. It makes a lot of sense to me. And it provided clarification when I first started working with other administrators throughout the district about the STEM program. If you notice, they keep referring to connections. That's why it's so important that we, as a high school and eventually as a district, are able to connect all the subjects and everything together and make it relative. But we'll talk more about that in a minute. Mm-mm. I think those pose some really good questions that we need to consider. Okay, so I hope you found that helpful. Okay, so the video discussed what is STEM and how it may look different in your classroom and why it ties together. So the things that I found important from that and reflecting on some of the workshops and trainings that I've been to that I think that will be important to you is that STEM will definitely be cross-curricular. Just because you teach a subject that's not included in the acronym doesn't mean that you won't have anything to do with STEM. So this is a learning process for all of us together. There's cross-curricular activities, there's more classroom projects, more open-ended question. We want to foster curiosity for students, implement teamwork in similar language, practice for failure, and also practice and prepare for resilience, because STEM being science focused, we know the scientific method, there's always room for growth. So here are the things that we just mentioned. With STEM, it is cross-curricular, and a lot to do with that has to do with relativity between subjects. For example, I have reviewed a lesson of a history teacher teaching Reconstruction after the Civil War, and not did he just teach that, but he tied in engineering. So students had to focus on where would you begin, everything from cleanup to reconstruction, like the actual reconstruction and rebuilding itself. So it tied everything in together. I thought that was a really neat idea. With cross curriculum, it's not just departmental planning, okay? So we really appreciate the fact that all of our math teachers have the same conference together. Well, that's wonderful, but there may be some change-ups in schedules a little bit, or one day a week provided, or lunch provided, something like that, where, say, math teachers can work with English teachers during a planning period, and everyone work together, as the team that we are, to come up with cross-curricular activities. Also, there will be an increase of activities in our classrooms, and most will be student-led, and at first it will probably appear chaotic. And, if you're a traditional teacher, if, you feel like your students learn best in rows and focusing and looking to the front all the time, then we might need to talk about some different strategies, because I know that students can learn well that way. But when we start building the STEM world, we know that that's not usually how it works, even in our own life. We have to balance several things at once. And anyway, so there's a lot of different regions to explore where STEM is concerned. And like I said, it's probably going to appear chaotic at first. So as you know, if we are participating in a lot of group work, if there's a lot going on, if we're asking open-ended questions, if we're expecting students to have student-led conversations, then we are going to have to use rubrics and consistency. So I don't expect you to have to pull that stuff out of thin air, but our district will help create that. I'm attending trainings on learning how in the most effective ways because, why recreate the wheel if there are other districts similar to us that have done this before? Because STEM is necessary. It's a wave of the future, and, to prepare our kids for life after high school, I think it's important. But anyway, what I'm getting back to is the rubrics. We have to be able to do that, and we have to be consistent. And another thing, this is really, really cool, the teamwork and same language. So as you know, our administrative team has visited different schools where STEM has been implemented for several years, and they're designated STEM academies already. And one of the neatest things to me is that they use the same language in kindergarten as they do for high school seniors. So when I'm talking about language, not just specific scientific method or anything like that, but they have the same designated roles in their group work. They have the same expectations across the board. So this is really neat. And, with my counseling background, I like to think of it as seeing everyone work together and knowing that our campuses will be pulling together and that we'll all be teaching the same things to our students, the same expectations, and eventually that all of them will just grow together and the students will know what we're talking about. So if you have a kid in 10th grade, they have been learning the same style, the same way, the same expectations ever since they were in kindergarten. So y'all seeing these kids, when you visit different places, we know that our kids can do the same thing. It's really neat. And the last thing I'm going to talk about real quick, instead of just continuing on and on and on about STEM, is preparedness. And I'm not just referring to preparing lessons, preparing to do this, preparing to learn something different, because I know as a teacher how difficult it is to prepare and be ready and stay on top of your game here at school when I know you have lives outside of school also. So I don't want you to think that any of this is adding to your plate. It's just changing a little bit on how we perceive education right now and how it will be perceived in the future. But anyhow, being prepared, there's two things we need to prepare ourselves for. We have to prepare for failure because STEM is new. It's different. It's something that we have not done yet. So if you think back to anything that you were new at, there were times that you failed at it. So we need to prepare ourselves for that. We need to prepare our students. Not every activity that we plan is going to work great. And so not only that, but we have to prepare to recover from failure. So resiliency is such a cool thing. So we might be able to say, excuse me, we might be able to say, well, that didn't work, so let's try it different. So we've all heard the story about Thomas Edison and light bulbs. There's tons and tons of examples of why resilience pays off. But I want to tell you right now that I will have your back on the days in your classroom where things don't go as they were planned, or when little Susie forgets her project, or whatever it may be. There's going to be things that will be difficult for us to work through just because STEM looks different than what our traditional classrooms always have. But I will be there to celebrate with you too when you've become resilient and things go as planned and even far beyond what is planned. So anyhow, STEM is going to be fun. It is going to change our instruction, and the main thing I want you to take away from this is that I've got your back. We're in this together. We're learning. It's going to be a good thing in the end, but there may be bumps along the road, and and I'm here for you. So anyway, as we prepare to become a STEM academy in the long run, I look forward to working with you as our team.